Medical licensing can be a hassle, but it doesn't have to be. Blue Shift Medical Licensing takes care of all the details, from the paperwork to the renewal tracking. Focus on what you love while they handle the heavy lifting. Plus, mention this podcast for a 5% discount. With Blue Shift, licensing is a breeze. Find them at blueshiftlicensing.com. You are listening to Practice on Purpose, where physicians can explore how to set up their career on purpose from the very beginning to stay connected to their purpose for their entire career. I'm Dr. Nicole Ewell, a health psychologist with decades of experience in healthcare, from the front lines of a level 1 trauma center to the leadership in one of the largest healthcare systems in the country. I'm passionate about physician well-being and creating mentally healthy workplaces. If you want to thoughtfully establish a career that aligns with your values and passions and ensure a long and rewarding life as a physician, then you've come to the right place. Today, we are talking about different practice models, such as concierge and boutique practice. Our guests today are Doctor Siatta Dunbar with Saravit Direct Health, Dr. Rebecca Gallagher with Gallagher Family Medicine, and Doctor Sajan Rao, a cardiologist at Naples Concierge Cardiology. Welcome to everyone.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. So I'm going to start off with some basic questions. Dr. Rao, could you tell us a bit about your practice and how you came to this model?
Sure. Well, first, thank you for having me. So I can start by saying that I practice in Naples, Florida, and I came to town in 2009. And I'm a general cardiologist, and so I basically do what most general cardiologists do. I see patients in the office, see patients in the hospital, and run the gamut of diagnostic tests. And I did that for well over a decade. Extremely happy practicing medicine, extremely happy taking care of patients. But like just about every physician I've ever spoken to over the last 10 years or so, frustrated by many of the things that were not so much in my control. The issues dealing with authorizations, with insurance companies, with prescribing needed drugs that were way out of the price range for patients to afford, and then dealing with authorization processes for that. And then maybe more uniquely to my situation in Naples, we have one more dominant healthcare system, almost monopoly, in terms of the amount of healthcare that they deliver in the county. And in 2018, there was a real threat that if you were not an employed physician, which I have not been, that you would not be able to practice at the hospital. And so that became almost existential, that we would have to move. And at that point, I had been thinking about doing some things on my own for a while, but at that point, I really realized that if I wanted to maintain my independence and autonomy and be able to be happy taking care of patients, I needed to do something different. And that's where the idea came for me in 2021 to start a concierge practice where I could free myself from some of these encumbrances.
I love that you, one of the things we really focus on in this podcast is adjusting your work to your life, and that you want to maintain your lifestyle, and you were happy where you were and you found a way to make that work on your terms. So congratulations for that. Dr. Gallagher, what about your practice? Can you tell us how it came to be?
Yes, my practice was a product of my experiences with my own health crisis. I had Guillain-Barré, and that left me with a lot of time to reconsider what I wanted my life to be after I recovered. And I felt like in many ways, it was the universe kind of pulling me out of the game and putting me on the bench, and left me thinking really about the current state of medicine and what did or did not work for me as an individual. I also became very motivated to blow up the traditional medical experience and create something that was addressing the biggest patient and physician complaints: lack of time, poor access, overwork, and very disjointed coordination of care. And it also came from and stemmed from my own experiences within the healthcare system as a patient.
Great. And isn't it funny how many of these stories start off with like, well, I faced a personal tragedy or a major illness. So just as a thought that we don't really save a lot of time to reflect, right? So what you're saying is that you had a lot of time to reflect. And sometimes if we can just carve out that time and make sure that you're really thoughtfully planning your career, and making sure you're checking in regularly on what you're doing and are you really happy and fulfilled. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Dr. Dunbar, you have a fascinating background, and medicine was not your first career. Can you tell us a little bit about that path and about Saravit?
For sure. Good morning, everybody. And it's such a treat to be with other physicians that are, I think we're all pretty like-minded. So it's pretty cool to be in this space with you. So yeah, like Nicole mentioned, I actually did architecture in undergrad. I went to University of Virginia, studied architecture, worked for almost 10 years, building retail parks and office buildings, built Crate and Barrel. And then there's an outdoor mall down in Richmond that I built. And life just sort of shows you that maybe there's some other places you need to be. And there were a couple pretty significant losses in my life. I lost my sister to breast cancer, and then my mom had a heart attack. And that really sort of shook me in a lot of ways and really started me thinking, gosh, am I in the right place? Am I doing what I really love to do? And with a lot of nudging from my brother, I give him a lot of credit because I started thinking about medicine, but I said, I'll be like a paramedic or something, and selling myself short. We don't have any physicians in our family. Never really thought that I was capable or able or all the things we tell ourselves, or at least I told myself. And my brother really nudged me. He said, just do it. Right. So I quit my job and I went to post-bac and spent, year and a half doing post-bac, and fast forward, got into primary care, which I love. And then I did a sports fellowship and practiced really musculoskeletal medicine for, 5 or so years, and got really sort of, it's like, man, am I really changing people's quality of life? I'd see people over and over, their life weren't changing. And again, all the physicians talk the same thing about just being sort of getting frustrated with the sort of insurance model. And I started looking at doing coaching. I got boarded in lifestyle medicine, started doing sort of coaching and consultations, started Saravit Wellness at the time, and did that outside of my traditional sports medicine practice that I was an employed physician. And that has continued to evolve. And about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I opened my own direct primary care practice now called Saravit Direct Health. The name Saravit is my two girls. I married their two names. For me, sort of being present for my family, having time for my family, which I wasn't, I don't think I can do if I stay in insurance-based healthcare. So now I'm direct primary care, and I still do some urgent care as I build that business, but I just feel overjoyed that I've sort of carved out this little piece that I feel really speaks to why I went into medicine in the first place.
Well, congratulations on that big step. You must be doing something right, because I went to your website to check in on you, and you're getting younger. Like your pictures from your architecture graduation, like you look younger now than you did then. So I don't know what you're doing, but you all should sign up for whatever services she's providing. She keep getting younger. So Dr. Gallagher, could you describe your business model a bit and how it might be different from a conventional family doc in private practice?
Absolutely. My business model is a hybrid of the direct primary care model, in that my patients can pay per visit or join the practice as a member. I also have tiers to the membership based on my patient's needs and complexity. My practice is self-pay, but the clients have the ability to use and leverage their insurance for labs, x-rays, referrals. Really anything outside of my billed visits can be sent to insurance. And I take particular joy in hacking the medical system, helping find decreased costs for labs or imaging, even out-of-pocket discount with specialists. So I find that really fun.
You've always been a hustler. You always look outside the box. I always admire about that.
I'll take that compliment.
Yeah, you are. It's good. And I, for our listeners, I know Dr. Gallagher. I've known her for a long time, work with her, and I refer patients to her because we live in the same area. And I've just never had anyone come back with anything less than rave reviews because she's relentless. So she will not stop until she figures it out. So Dr. Dunbar, what about your business model?
Yeah, so Saravit Direct Health, the direct primary care that I started, is probably a little similar to Dr. Gallagher in that it's membership based. Again, anything out of my visit is covered in their membership, point of care testing. And then I love the way you put it, hacking the medical system, which is, I agree, is a true joy. Where can we get labs cheaper? Where can we get meds cheaper? Where can we get imaging cheaper? Those sorts of things, so that folks just aren't absolutely crushed by the cost of healthcare, which really doesn't need to be. A little bit of sidebar. I read this article about a gentleman who went and got earwax removed from an ENT office and got like $1,000, I think it was like an $1,800 bill or something ridiculous like that. Like, that just does not happen. It shouldn't happen, right? So those sort of ancillary services are all covered in the membership, and always looking for ways to create a scholarship fund, right? So for people who are uninsured and don't have the capacity to pay for that membership, that's something that I want to be able to do, so that those that don't have it can still get access to good quality care where it's really a trusting, patient-physician relationship. Yeah.
I'm seeing more and more people take on that Tom's model of, part of the fee of your care is going to go towards someone else having access to care. It's kind of an interesting model, but that's really great. Thank you. Dr. Rao, tell us about practicing concierge cardiology and how that is different from traditional cardiology business models. I have no idea. I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah, I think, concierge medicine is something that it's been part of sort of the landscape of medical care for a while. Depending on where you live, it may be more popular. In Naples, it's very popular. Cardiology as a concierge specialty is probably a little bit more something that's a newer thing. To my knowledge, I was one of the first practices to do this a few years ago. There's more now. And what I tell patients, when I tell them what I do, or tell my colleagues, is I do the same thing that I used to do as a cardiologist. I just do more for less. My practice before was busy, and I saw it, which wasn't as busy as even many cardiologists were, but I would see 20 patients a day. I had a physician extender, or we had more than one physician extender, and so they would see maybe another 6 or 8 of my own patients, and so I would be responsible for a good amount of patient care plus everything else. And so now my practice is capped at around 300 patients, and it's retainer based. I do a fair bit of pro bono care for those who could never have access to such a thing. But for the most part, it's a retainer-based model of around 300 patients. And I do the same thing. It's just that when patients call and they say, hey, what does Dr. Rao think? I call them back. It's not a nurse or an MA. If there's a question after hours, they call, I pick up. And so there's just a level of access and availability that you can only do when you have hundreds of patients, not thousands of patients. But I still feel like I'm a cardiologist. I still, do all the other things. I do some other things that I'm allowed to do or able to do because of where I practice. We have a teaching program, and so I'm in a week or two I'll be attending on the teaching service. I still stay sharp, I feel like, and I do a lot for education for the hospital system. Those are things I've chosen to do to just make sure I'm connected to why I became a cardiologist.
And you're also giving back to other physicians. Are you the head of the physician wellbeing program?
Yeah. So a few years ago, I helped to found the physician wellness committee at my hospital system, and you were an outstanding hit speaker that we brought down to share, different things we do. And one of them is education and understanding how to incorporate wellness in your daily practice. So that's very important to me. It's probably my biggest passion, I would say, outside of practicing medicine, taking care of my family, is trying to help my colleagues and deal with all these different struggles. And I've seen it firsthand too many times. And so I think it's a mission for all of us.
Dr. Dunbar, can you tell me the number one benefit of your current practice?
I think it's time that I have with patients. So my focus is really on prevention. Like I mentioned, I lost 2 really important people in my life that I think if they had a relationship with their physician that was rooted in prevention and treating root cause, their life, their trajectory would have been markedly different. So for me, that's my motivation is having the time, because it takes time to develop that relationships, right? When you're trying to help people understand, that some of our lifestyle choices are leading us in a direction that is disease promoting, and how to unwind some of that behavior. It's rooted in mental health. It's rooted in, some trauma. So I think having that time to develop that relationship and to help people make baby steps that when you stack them really do improve their overall quality of life. So for me, it's at least time with patients. Personally, it's time with my family, right? I get to buy back some of my time to spend with my kids who are growing way too fast. And I don't want to look up in 30 years and say, gosh, I miss the soccer and I miss the dance. Right. So it's being present for my family. So for me, it's time on both sides, professionally and personally.
That's great. So Dr. Rao, what do you love about your current situation?
That's probably a long list, to be honest with you, but if I had to pick maybe just one, I'd say autonomy. We mentioned the work I do with physician wellness, and when we do surveys, and we just finished another large survey of our medical staff, when you ask about burnout, which is rampant, it's the biggest driver of burnout is the loss of autonomy. Not being able to practice in the way that you want, or feeling that you're being told what to do, even if it's not in the interest of your patients. And so when you have a model where you can become sufficient and independent, you have the autonomy to make the decisions that you think are best and practice the way I think, that was the calling that most of us had to go into medicine. So I think that's been the most important benefit of the change.
And that stands up across industries in the data that support and autonomy are the two biggest drivers of work satisfaction, is if people feel that they are supported by the supervisors and the organization, and that they have some say in their work environment. So those two things, moving the needle on those two things, can have a tremendous impact on the way people perceive stress at work. They'll actually see the same thing as less stressful if they feel that people supported them and they had a bit of a say in the topic. So Dr. Gallagher, what's your favorite thing about owning your own business?
Well, I feel like I'm able to practice medicine in the ways that feel valuable to my patients and also keep my happy factor up. My relationships with my patients are definitely more closer than they were when I was an employed physician. I do house calls, so I get to see their intimate setting and get to know their family unit, which is really quite fun. I also have a really beautiful office space that I've decorated with some of my favorite items that are a reflection of my style and feel like home. I get to bring my miniature poodle to work, and she's quite beloved. I have patients who will only schedule if Stella is in the office and working. And she
does have a great mohawk.
She does. She's quite fashionable. And I also have the flexibility to engage in my passion outside of work, which is competitive horseback riding, and has always been my dream.
Isn't this a cool group of people? So much fun. So I want to get real for a second and hear some of the challenges that you might be facing. And we know that running a business is never 100% a positive experience. There's lots of work involved, and there's always barriers and setbacks. Dr. Rao, what are the drawbacks to your current business model?
Well, when I made the change, which was a few years ago, and I still feel this today, I had a big practice of people, and I took care of everyone without regard to ability to pay or anything like that. So there was a lot of patients who I became close with, and just the necessity of a concierge practice where you have a smaller number of patients, you had to say bye to a lot of patients or not be able to provide care for a lot of patients. That was hard. I think that was really one of the harder things, and that's a drawback of this model, the fact that you don't have as many people that you're connected to. But aside from that, I would say perhaps, the day-to-day challenges are running a business. And, you give up, when you're employed, you have the ability to pass off the buck of HR, of the expenses that come. I'm just completing a build out of some additional space and any of the issues that you have dealing with construction. So these are just day-to-day operational things. Sometimes we have HR issues where employees, no longer are a good fit. And that's all tough things that we don't really get a lot of training for in our education process or our training process. And so it's on the job. So those are things that I find are challenging, but I guess you get better at it as you do it longer.
Yeah. My dad ran a business, and he always said, if it weren't for the customers and the employees, running your own business would be amazing.
Right.
I think he struggled sometimes. So Dr. Gallagher, what are the barriers or drawbacks to your practice?
I will echo those sentiments as well. Just like any business, there are definitely challenges and challenging times. And for me, it's the balance of working on the business versus in the business can be a juggle. Issues arise, and there really isn't the hospital or practice administrator to take care of it. Things like the tree fell down on the power line this morning, and you have to find somebody to come help and pivot and be creative about that. And then also hiring employees that are a good match and that share your dedication to your business and practice is difficult. It's like trying to hire a new member of your work family, and sometimes it's just not a good fit, or the relationships change over time.
Right. Something works at first and then they grow
Yeah.
or move on, and there's always turnover, right?
Yeah.
Blue Shift Medical Licensing offers a concierge service to assist healthcare physicians and other providers with obtaining state licensing. Led by industry experts, their experience and methods allow them to do the majority of the licensing work for you. They have licensed all types of providers across all states and have familiarity with all of the licensing compacts. Let Blue Shift Medical Licensing help you get back to seeing patients and your family instead of worrying about administrative burdens. Plus, mention this podcast for a 5% discount. Set it and forget it with blueshiftlicensing.com. Dr. Dunbar, what challenges have you faced?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what the other two physicians said, that and in addition, since I'm a bit earlier in my process as far as having a brick and mortar, when I was an employed physician, I just showed up for work and all the patients showed up, right? I didn't really have to think about marketing. I didn't have to think about getting out there and doing the networking and making relationships and those sorts of things. So for me, again, building this is really, that is the struggle. And I think will continue to be, is how do you market and how do you network to sort of get this model out and to know that you're available for patients that are in my community.
So that brings up a good point. Who among you loves marketing yourselves?
I don't think it's a strength of most doctors. We're not so good at bragging about ourselves or telling people how great we are at doing things. It's a tough part of the job.
Anybody else?
I would agree. I actually have not marketed myself and have just grown organically, which has worked well and has made the growth process containable. But
I will say
not
that
my favorite thing.
For sure. And in this model, I do think word of mouth is the way these businesses do tend to grow. You take care of someone who has a great experience, or they recognize how different it is from traditional medical care, and they just it spreads through neighborhoods. I've seen that happen in my own practice too. So it's you don't have to do it as much if you're capped at a smaller number. And it depends. I think some of us have different models. If you're still trying to see lots of patients, then maybe it does help to let people know that there is a different way to receive healthcare.
Right. Yeah. So what advice would you all give to someone starting out in their medical career? Or I'll give you two questions. You can answer either one of them. What advice would you give someone who is considering a more unconventional model of practice?
Do it. I think that's what I would say is do it. I think that physicians sometimes underestimate how incredibly talented they are. It's obvious that you have to report the intelligence and the fortitude that it's required to become a doctor, but we're capable of a lot of things, and sometimes we're also victims of wanting to be in our comfort zone, and we don't like to step out of the box a little bit. I've seen people I've trained with or gone to school with have done everything, whether it be what I'm doing, a boutique model of practice, writing a book, joining pharma. One of the things I think is you have to stay true to your purpose. We were all called to this, but not all of us were called in the same way. I love taking care of patients. I have colleagues of mine and friends who only want to be in the cath lab or do procedures, or I have colleagues who would only want to be teaching residents and then writing papers. So I think you have to find and stay true to your calling and your purpose, but don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone.
That's great. Anybody else?
I'll take a stab at this. I think that one of the things that was a big barrier for me doing this sooner was actually this idea that there are things that are not possible, like paying for your own malpractice or finding staff, finding licensure, and being able to build over time. I have found that really everything's figure outable. It may not be easy, but I think that we are kind of told that there is this pre-paved path for us, and that's not always the case. That you can find the things you're passionate about and infuse it into your practice in a meaningful way.
I think that's so important, because I do think that a lot of people, as they're exiting training, are really in such urgency to get the job and they forget that time, as you were talking about, that time for reflection and to really think, what do I want my life to look like, and what is the best path for me or me and my family. And and not everybody has the luxury of reflecting on that at that moment, but hopefully at some point in your career, you can step back when you're feeling financially able to make that decision, and to really be thoughtful about, as Dr. Rao
The
said.
other thing I would maybe say is that, because we are professionals who have a unique set of skills, I mean, we have staying power. So not that I would say I would do this repetitively, but you do have some flexibility to try. It's not like the end of the road. And sometimes I've seen people who feel like their job is hopeless, or that they just, they don't see that there can be joy in their career again. And it's totally not true. And you can try other things. And frankly, there's not very many places that can't use another good doctor. So there's an opportunity, even if it doesn't work, where you'll still land on your feet. It sounds daunting, especially when you get, when you have a family and your kids are in school. There's lots of other things that you have to consider, of course. But I think that the idea that we have a skill set that not many people can do is something to keep in mind.
So you can give it a shot. You don't have to quit your job. Dr. Dunbar was able to do this and build a practice while working at another employed position, and you can always get another job. So Absolutely. What about you, Dr. Dunbar? Do you have advice to share?
Yeah, I would say maybe the term that comes up is just stay curious and stay open. My road has been so windy and has taken so many different turns. And, as I sit back and I look back at it in the moment, I was like, why is this happening? Why can't I, you know what I mean? But like, when I look back, I'm like, man, just staying open and curious and being flexible and being willing, like Dr. Rao was saying, is to take a chance, right? Take a leap of faith. I think the other thing that I did, which wasn't easy, was to be verbal about what I was thinking. And because of that, people showed up. It was amazing, right? You talk and you're like, I'm thinking about this thing. And next thing you know, someone's like, oh my gosh, let me plug you in with this person. You should meet that person. And then you get to network, and somebody says, I take an interest and I want to mentor you. And those are things that I sort of lived a very insular life when I was younger. And I've learned to be a bit more vocal, and I don't know, call it the universe, call it God, call it calling, right? People show up, and it's been such a blessing. So I would encourage people to share, be open, be curious, and tell people what you're doing, because there are good people out there that would want to support you and help you.
I think that's great advice, because when I was taking the leap to start my own company, a friend said, your network's going to take care of you. You're going to be okay. You can do this. You're able to do this. And my network has taken care of me. But what I didn't expect is the strangers that were willing to meet with me and talk with me and share advice and share connections and introductions. And it's just unbelievable. People are, I think, on the whole, pretty generous, and the medical community, I think, is eager to help each other in a lot of cases. So one of the things I like to do in each episode is to end with a few questions on purpose. So I will go one by one and just ask you guys a few quick questions. So let's start with Dr. Rao. What is your greatest passion or purpose?
Well, at the risk of sounding cliche, I went into medicine because I enjoy taking care of people. And to be honest with you, I do feel like that is a purpose that connects me. It's hard when you're doing the job that we do, that you're in the midst of a lot of different, life and death type situations. Sometimes it can be maybe less serious, but you still have to really get involved and deep and personal with people's lives. But for me, that gives me purpose, that I can connect with people and really be sort of as personal as you can be involved with someone who's not your family. You can be that way as a doctor. And that gives me an enormous amount of joy.
And are there any practices you have to stay connected to your purpose?
Well, I do remind myself, less now, because my life has become, I don't have feeling pulled in so many different directions. But I do recall, when things were more chaotic, to always walk into the door. Before I walked in the door, I just closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and said, be present with what you're doing, and just remember that what you're doing is worthwhile. And that helps, because we all have so many other things going on in our lives and in our minds, and but if you just let yourself, and it's actually somewhat therapeutic. I've also said that before, that, no matter what's going on in your life, when you close the door and you're with someone else, I think that's why all of us are in this healing business too, is there's a part of it that makes us feel good by just helping others and kind of giving to what's in front of you and the situation in front of you.
Yeah. And just reminding yourself that you're valuable to other people, or that you're bringing value, because it's very easy when you're caught up in the paperwork of medical care
Right.
to think this is so crazy, like, wow, I'm not helping anybody. I'm just a data entry person here. So it's really great that you have that practice. So what's next for you?
Still talking to me?
Yes. What's next for you, and what exciting things do you have planned?
Well, honestly, I don't have a lot of aspirations to do more. I'm happy doing what I do, which is to take care of people. The things that I do outside of my medical practice, like the things that I do to support physician well-being, is something I'm very passionate about, and just want to continue to make the work that we're doing known to other providers in the community. That's something I do a lot of. I spend a lot of my extra time doing that. But I think we are expanding a little bit. My practice, I did bring in an associate in November, and she's doing a great job. And so, but I don't really have like any aspirations to build some huge concierge empire or anything like that. I like to keep things kind of simple, and just as long as our patients are happy, and it's important to me that the work that we do is well thought of. And so I think that does drive me a little bit too. I have to say that not everyone is driven by that. That's not so much that I don't want to get caught up in what other people think, but if there is a sense of satisfaction knowing that you really are doing a good job and you're doing the best that you can do.
That's great. So Dr. Dunbar, what is your greatest passion or purpose?
Yeah. For me, it's helping patients understand that they have more control over their health than they realize. At least, again, early on in my medical career, I think we tend to do a lot, and patients tend to just sort of be sort of bystanders in their own care, and they're sort of waiting for what's the next thing that we are going to tell them to do or take, and I think helping them understand that they actually have more control over their health than any prescription that I could write them, and supporting them in that process. So really getting back to the basics of lifestyle and how we move and eat and stress management, just those sorts of things. So really returning the power back to my patients is really what brings in. When that happens and that light bulb goes off and they come back and they're like, holy moly, that's like, yes, it just fills my heart. It just really does. I just love it.
And how do you stay connected to that purpose?
Gosh.
Especially when your patients aren't getting the light bulb isn't going on.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of what Dr. Rao is saying is just before going in, recognizing that you have to meet people where they are. So just being patient, and being willing to come back to it over and over again. And I think living my life that way, sort of quote unquote practicing what I preach, keeps me connected to that, right? Keeps it really real, knowing that I can sort of speak from the heart when I say these things actually give benefit. It's because I do them daily. So that allows me to stay connected to that.
And what's next for you?
I want to help other docs see that there's another way. Dr. Gallagher said that it doesn't have to be just go to med school, go to residency, be an employed doc. There's so many different options. Right. And especially when it comes to women physicians and Black physicians, helping them understand that there's so much more and there are other options and there's other ways to take care of our communities and not lose our soul in the process.
Yeah, that's so amazing. All right, Dr. Gallagher, what is your greatest passion or purpose?
Well, my passion is essentially what brought me to medicine, which is being a fierce advocate for my patients, especially when they're feeling vulnerable or unable to advocate for themselves. I have become known as being a little bit of a bulldog in a kind way and forcing the medical system to work for my patients, whether it's having specialists talk to each other, digging into a more complicated case, and also spelling out what the details are that are relevant so that the patients and their families understand. I think the biggest failure of the system I've seen is that medicine is like a bad game of telephone, that handoffs are pretty discoordinated and disjointed. And I like to see myself as being the person who helps make the medical system work for my patients, especially when things get difficult.
Mm-hmm. I can attest to the fact that she is a bulldog. She will not stop. How do you stay connected to that passion or purpose?
I think I really do my best to have enough downtime so that I have the energy to hit my higher gears professionally when I need to. I also recognize that I can't do everything for everybody and that I need to recruit help. And that can be recruiting help from other people or other referrals in the system.
Yeah, so important. So what's next for you?
I think a lot of growth and improving our organization as a practice, bringing in some different communication tools, whether it's different text platforms or access to records. I really enjoy doing case summaries, and that's something that I've wanted to build on so that that's accessible for my patients and their families to carry their medical information forward.
That's great. So just in case people want to learn more about you guys, Dr. Gallagher, where can people go to learn more about you?
They can go to my website, GallagherFamilyMedicine.com.
Okay. And Dr. Dunbar?
Yeah, so Saravit Wellness, Saravit, and then WELLNESS, all one word, .com.
Great. Dr. Rao?
We are at NaplesCCIM.com.
Okay. Except you're full, right? You're turning people
Well,
away.
my practice is full, but I do have an associate. She's got
Yes, that's great. You're So thank you so much to all of you. It's so inspiring to hear people who are truly making things work their way, taking risks and trying new things and succeeding and feeling as though this is really bringing you in line with your purpose. So I want to thank everybody for joining us for this chat. I think we've learned a lot about different business models and different approaches and the possibilities with your medical career. We hope this show has you thinking about your own career and what actions you can take to make it ideal for you right from the start. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and tell others to join us. We greatly appreciate your reviews and comments, which help us grow to a wider audience. If you want to stay in touch, email me at practiceonpurpose@heyinfluent.com. Let me know what topics you want us to explore in future episodes. And remember, build your practice on purpose to stay connected to your purpose. I appreciate you joining us on this journey. Let's keep exploring together. Until next episode.